Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Ask everyone to take a guess where we. Sorry about that. Where we are. It's a little bit of an iconic property behind us.
Yes. It's not Shakespeare's house.
No, but we're actually sitting down by the lake.
Yeah.
Pond.
Lake, pond. Pond, lake.
So, nice day to read. A few parrots are around. We hear them every now and again. It's very, very peaceful and quiet, but a little chilly.
Yeah.
Still waiting for it to warm up.
Yeah.
See if that ever happens.
Waiting 5 months.
Okay, so we'll chant the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Alright, verses 14 and 15. He lives in filthy places like crematoriums, and his companions are the ghosts and demons. Naked like a madman, sometimes laughing and sometimes crying, he smears crematorium ashes all over his body. He does not bathe regularly, and he ornaments his body with a garland of skulls and bones. Therefore, only in name is he Shiva, or all auspicious. Actually, he is the most mad and inauspicious creature. Thus, he is very dear to crazy beings in the gross mode of ignorance, and he is their leader. Purport. Those who do not regularly bathe are supposed to be in association with ghosts and crazy creatures. Lord Shiva appeared to be like that, but his name Shiva is actually fitting, for he is very kind to persons who are in the darkness of the mode of ignorance, such as unclean drunkards who do not regularly bathe. Lord Shiva is so kind that he gives shelter to such creatures and gradually elevates them to spiritual consciousness. Although it is very difficult to raise such creatures to spiritual understanding, Lord Shiva takes charge of them, and therefore, as stated in the Vedas, Lord Shiva is all auspicious. Thus, by his association, even such fallen souls can be elevated. Sometimes it is seen that great personalities meet with fallen souls, not for any personal interest, but for the benefit of those souls. In the creation of the Lord, there are different kinds of living creatures. Some of them are in the mode of goodness, some are in the mode of passion, and some are in the mode of ignorance. Can you hear the ducks? Lord Vishnu takes charge of persons who are advanced Krishna conscious Vaishnavas, and Lord Brahma takes charge of persons who are very much attached to material activities. But Lord Shiva is so kind that he takes charge of persons who are in gross ignorance and whose behavior is lower, like that of the animals. Therefore, Lord Shiva is especially called auspicious. So, on the one hand, Daksha is externally right. If someone were to look at it, yeah, this man sits like half naked, which he does, and he's got like skull garland and covers himself with ashes and doesn't look so nice to some people, and his associates are a bit uncouth. So on the one hand you could say yes, it's correct, but as Prabhupada explains, there's a higher reason for these things, and the higher reason is that Shiva's taken on this service and doing this great service of being amongst people and areas and situations that most wouldn't want to be amongst. You know, it actually reminds me of Srila Prabhupada when I was reading this. Let's be honest, I've often said this, like when we were serving, especially in the city London temple, some of the people, you know, you have a notice on the door which gives you the right to say, don't come in, please. And some people, you come in and you think, oh, I ain't got time for this. But actually, these are the people that Prabhupada went to live amongst and preach to, and actually created amazing Vaishnavas out of. Thank God he did that. So where would we be? You know? Of course, he preached to anyone that he, saw. He wasn't particular, but he had his mood, when I was reading this, it reminded me, so compassionate. And someone else may judge him, his god brothers or anyone, that Prabhupada Swami or Abhay Swami, went to America. What's he doing? He's living in the slums in New York. But they didn't realize what great work or service he was doing, giving the highest knowledge to the lowest people, really.
Yeah. Shiva means auspicious, right? So Lord Shiva, Prabhupada is saying here that Lord Shiva is considered auspicious because he takes on that service of looking after the most fallen people. We call Prabhupada Patita Pavana. We call Lord Chaitanya Patita Pavana, Lord Nityananda, anyone who is the savior or lifter of the most fallen, So that's a very auspicious thing. It's not an easy thing. It's easy to look after someone who's, quote unquote, got it all together, already kind of pious, already understands, but to try to look after and care for someone who's really steeped in ignorance is like, it's not an easy thing. It can be very tribulating. Okay, text 16. On the request of Lord Brahma, also I was thinking that Daksha is using, he's using kind of scriptural knowledge to offend. Does that make sense? So he's saying, kind of based on the fact that this is the mode of ignorance, and so that means some sort of higher knowledge is there. So it can be like that. Sometimes we find some quote from Prabhupada, and we use that as a weapon against someone, or use that to deride or degrade someone, which probably almost 99.9% for sure Srila Prabhupada certainly didn't mean it that way. More like 108% he didn't mean it like that. So sometimes we can use Shastra against others in a offensive or aggressive way that's not really the way it's meant to be used. And Daksha seems to be doing the same thing. So, text 16. On the request of Lord Brahma, I handed over my chaste daughter to him, although he is devoid of all cleanliness and his heart is filled with nasty things. So here we see that the web gets more entangling. Now he's implicating Lord Brahma in the mess. Basically saying, on the request of Lord Brahma, I handed over my daughter. So obviously Lord Brahma said, you should marry your daughter to Lord Shiva. And what do you do if Lord Brahma asks you to do something? Then you basically agree. But he obviously wasn't happy. So let's see what he says. Purport. It is the duty of parents to hand over their daughters to suitable persons, just befitting their family tradition and cleanliness, gentle behavior, wealth, social position, etc. Daksha was repentant that on the request of Brahma, who was his father, he had handed over his daughter to a person who, according to his calculation, was nasty. He was so angry that he did not acknowledge the request was from his father. So here we have a person who's proclaiming upset because Shiva didn't offer respect to his father-in-law, and he's offering disrespect to his direct father. This is the contradictions that happen once we start to become offensive. Instead, he referred to Brahma as Paramasti, the supreme teacher in the universe. Okay, so at least he referred to him respectfully, but not as his father. Because of his temperament of gross anger, he was not even prepared to accept Brahma as his father. In other words, he accused even Brahma of being less intelligent because he had advised Daksha to hand over his beautiful daughter to such a nasty fellow. In anger, one forgets everything, and thus Daksha, in anger, not only accused the great Lord Shiva, but criticized his own father, Lord Brahma, for his not very astute advice that Daksha hand over his daughter to Lord Shiva. So yeah, Prabhupada, just sets the scene perfectly, that and adding this point that Daksha didn't refer to Brahma as his father, which is very powerful. Instead, he referred to him as his supreme teacher. But then he refers to him as his supreme teacher, but then he basically says he was ignorant, he was stupid, silly, He basically said I should hand over the daughter. It's like we do that kind of thing all the time. We deride others with some sharp comment. And here you have Daksha. He's just digging himself into a hole that, as we'll hear later, it's going to be very difficult to get out of.
Spectacularly. Text 17. The sage Maitreya continued, thus Daksha, seeing Lord Shiva sitting as if against him, washed his hands and mouth and cursed him in the following words. First he washed his hands and mouth, then he cursed him. So at least he washed his hands and his mouth first.
Well, there's some, if you're going to utter a curse, it means you have to chant some mantra, therefore you have to be clean. So Daksha means expert. Although I think it's explained elsewhere that expert and sense gratification. But he's expert nonetheless, so to utter a mantra for a curse or for a blessing means one should be clean, so like that.
Text 18. The demigods are eligible to share in the oblations of sacrifice, but Lord Shiva, who is the lowest of all the demigods, should not have a share. Purport. Because of this curse, Shiva was deprived of his share in the oblations of Vedic sacrifices. It was due to the curse of Daksha. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments in this connection that Lord Shiva was saved from the calamity of taking part with other demigods who were all materialistic. Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it is not fitting for him to eat or sit with materialistic persons like the demigods. Thus, the curse of Daksha was indirectly a blessing, for Shiva would not have to sit or eat with other demigods who were too materialistic. There is a practical example set for us by Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who used to sit on the side of a latrine to chant Hare Krishna. Many materialistic persons used to come and bother him and disturb his daily routine of chanting. So to avoid their company, he used to sit by the side of a latrine where materialistic persons would not go because of the filth and the obnoxious smell. However, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj was so great that he was accepted as the spiritual master of such a great personality as His Divine Grace Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. The conclusion is that Lord Shiva behaved in his own way to avoid materialistic persons who might disturb him in his prosecution of devotional service. Yeah, so Shiva's, as we'll see, as we do see, is not phased either way, because his goal is on the highest, or like he's fixed on the goal. He's just meditating on the Lord, and he doesn't care about fame and honor and dishonor and what's my share and what's for prasadam at the sacrifice and like that. He's just really not bothered, but not in a I'm not bothered. He's just generally he's dhira. He's very sober. So for him, it's pretty good that he even turned up in one sense. But he turned up, but still he's focused in himself on the Lord. So this is Shiva.
Interesting how the acharyas also sometimes or many times will turn the understanding around.
Yeah.
You know, it's the age-old adage, you know, that we can either see the glass is half empty or half full. So in this way, the acharyas, you know, sometimes they'll say that how a curse is actually a prayer, and they'll use the same words and say that this word can be broken up like this, and then it means this. So here we see Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that actually this whole calamity or this curse, it saved Lord Shiva from having to associate with all these materialistic persons, the demigods. Okay, so hopefully Vishwanath didn't make any offense or upset there, but yeah, like that. And then Prabhupada mentions Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in here, and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, and the fact that he used to sit next to a latrine. And of course, hopefully everyone who's watching knows what a latrine is. Means the toilet, an outside toilet.
And that too, an Indian one, which is really gross. Oh, sure, yeah.
Hare Krishna.
I mean,
So-
you know what I mean? Oh, Vishnu.
I mean, outside toilets means the stuff don't go anywhere except into a hole, you know, and that's it.
Okay.
When I was growing up, my grandparents lived next door, and I remember as a kid they used to have an outhouse, is what they
Yeah.
would call it, an outhouse.
Outhouse.
And it was like that some years ago in this country also.
Yeah,
Running
yeah.
water and toilets is only a thing definitely in the last century. Well, last century and the previous century anyway, 1900s certainly manifested. Before that, it didn't exist. So anyway, he would chant
Yeah.
there so that people basically wouldn't bug him because
Yeah.
he was such an exalted person. Everybody wanted to come and see him and get his association, so like that.
Bit awkward though if you want to go loo, but
Well, yeah. You always think of these things. So maybe we conclude
we'll
there.
call it a day on that
And
point.
we'll call it a day. End with our minds in the toilet. So thank you all very much for tuning in.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you for the next exciting installment of the Srimad Bhagavatam Bites. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.